that protects our children's children. And as we talk about our children's children, let me introduce our next guest, Charlene Sealey, who's very close to my heart for a good reason.
Hey, how you doing? You okay?
One second there. You need to send to yourself. You're send to yourself. There
Oh, I'm too far.
you go.
Oh, there we go.
Hello, Charlene with the daddy face and the mummy smile.
I don't think I look like my dad. Everyone tells me I look like my mum.
You do. You got your mum's smile. I tell you that. You got your mum's smile. No one
I've got
can't.
that Bayesian forehead, mate.
Yeah,
I've got the Bayesian forehead going on.
That's why I said you got your dad's face and your mum's. But that's a good thing because the smile overcompensates.
Oh, that's good.
It's
Oh,
been a
mate.
it's been a mad minute. So for those who don't know, this is my I won't even call you my little cousin. Once you have Pickney, you're no longer a little cousin no more. You're grown. When's the last time I saw you?
Mate, I can't even remember. That's how long ago it was. Many years. It's been many years.
Obviously, we're a family, we're close, but it's mad that we have family who literally live across the road and we don't see each other. And I suppose we're all going to Barbados, obviously, from my dad. And
Can't wait.
yeah,
Yes.
and it's going to be an emotional, but like it's these times we can enjoy
Yeah.
our time together. And the children coming?
Yeah, the children are coming. We're all coming. Everyone's going to be there. All 11 of us. Well, there's 11 of us going.
So this is really weird, this interview. Not all of you are staying at Auntie Lou's house.
The way no, half and half. We've got one one at my grandma's, and then we've got a house like a couple doors down that we're renting out. So we'll all be around the corner from you.
Yep. Looking forward to it. All right, let's get to the matter in hand. First things first, I'm going to ask you, Charlene, are you politically aware of what's going on? Are you interested in politics?
I am. I would say, like, I do try to keep up with what's going on in the political sphere, not just in the UK, but globally. I do like to keep my head attuned or abreast as to what is going on.
The reason why I ask that, because obviously in the world of education, politics plays a massive, massive role. And as we know that teachers are not paid what they should be paid, we know the workload has increased tenfold for teachers, and we are seeing teachers not being homegrown, so to speak, because of the job and the role has become less attractive. So this is why I asked you, are you politically aware? So when we have budgets and we have elections as is coming up, are you very much in tuned to what policies affect the education system?
Yeah, I think just there's a lot of tension between teachers, and then they go through the unions to kind of get what they want from the government. But what I will go into is I don't know if you've heard of this term, and it's called the silver tsunami. And that is, in the UK, we have a very heavy or a large amount of people that are in the higher age bracket, so like 50 and upwards. And because of that, the younger ones, like my age and below, we're not having enough children. So for that reason, the government are a little bit scared in the sense, because it's like, okay, if we're not having enough children, who's then going to pay the pensions as we get older? So what they're doing now, because of that, they need to rethink and reshuffle their budgets. So in the background, this is going on, and the government are very, very aware of this, because they've got all these I'm digressing here, but all these biotech solutions that they're going to come, that they want to put into play, like having booths in the UK that take a urine sample from you and measure your age and to see if you're getting older, all of that kind of stuff. So at the moment, they're trying to budget as much as they can in order to save money, or in the sense, so that they don't have enough money to go around, because they can foresee that this, silver tsunami is going to affect us economically, financially, politically. And so where you're seeing head teachers in that crying out, saying, we don't have enough resources, we're under-resourced, and the government are cutting back funding from the schools, this then leads to that climate in the classroom where teachers do not want to be there. We don't want to work under those conditions. So let me break it down to a teacher's day. A teacher will start work, say you're paid to work between say 8:30 and 4:30. However, you've got to get to school early enough to set up your classroom. You've got to leave late enough to mark your books, because most of your head teachers want your books marked before the next lesson. So if I do 5 subjects in a day, that's 5 sets of 30 books that I'm expected to mark that day. So it is just so unrealistic. Remember, you're not paid for those overtime hours, and everyone thinks, oh, but you get all the holidays off, but I'm working like a donkey, during term time.
And I could say this as well, being involved in the school curriculum and system, you have a 6-week break, but you do not have your 6-week break, because you've got to come in those 6 weeks to set up your class,
exactly,
your particular year group.
Yep.
And so technically you have 3 weeks.
Yep. You've got to come in, you've got to get all of your display boards up. You need to print your resources for the next year. You've got your admin tasks to do. You're on training during those 6-week holidays. Every year you have to redo your safeguarding training. If the head teacher feels that it's appropriate to shift or change whatever syllabus they were using, say for maths or English, then you need to go and be retrained on those. So your time is not really your own during those holidays. So I know there's a misconception out there as to teachers and what time they do have, and everyone thinks we're just swanning off and leaving school at 3:15 and going home. But no, it is purely a misconception.
Those are TAs. They do that.
Exactly.
Before we get into the actual crux of this conversation, so why did you become a teacher, Charlene?
When I was very young, I was in primary school, and there was a teacher that really inspired me. I found her to be, very nurturing as a teacher. And I remember in year 4, year 5, I used to go home and I would literally write out a register. I used to make a register and line up all my dollies and then take the register and then teach a lesson. So from then, I've always known teaching is something that I want to do. I've always wanted to get into it. And so my path from there was, specifically and intentionally geared towards becoming a teacher.
So you become a teacher, you're inspired, which is great, because if we're honest with ourselves, there's always that 1 or 2 teachers who you always will remember.
Yeah.
And not just remember because they were good at the subject matter. They went out above and beyond. Look out for their students, right? For me, it was Mr. Roberts, and God rest his soul, if Boogie's listening, Mr. Laken, who unfortunately took his life. Yeah,
no.
Other reasons. So you've become a teacher now. You're in the school system. You're doing the school curriculum. How did you find it? And what was the realities? And it started to sink in that it wasn't the world which you thought it was.
My bubble burst very quickly. So when you're doing your teacher training, you're just you just think that the weight of the teaching is just hard because, you're new to it and you're still trying to learn the ropes and you're still, trying to get used to it. Once you become solely in charge of that class, you're like, oh my goodness, a reality check hits you. So you will have 30 children in a class and a plethora of abilities. So you may have some that are very low in ability, some that are SEN that may have autism or ADHD that are, diagnosed with such SEN needs. And then you have your middle ability, and then you have your higher ability. So that's just ability wise. But what you also have is a range of temperaments. So you will have someone who's highly extroverted and highly sociable, and those are the children that talk a lot. And then you might have someone who's an introvert, and you've got to pull the talking points out of them. So I didn't realize that I would be pulled in so many different ways in trying to cater to the needs of these children. So that's one thing in itself. But the workload, oh my goodness, I did not realize how much time I would spend doing admin. So marking is fine because obviously the children need to know what their targets are and, how they can improve on their work. But all of this behind the scenes marking and the scrutiny of your teaching, how often you're observed and they're telling you they don't like this and they don't like that. You could get a class that, say for instance, they've come, say I'm a year 4 teacher and I've got a year 3 class come to me, and 60% of them have not met their year 3 targets for maths and English. I will then have the task of getting 87% of those students to working at year 4 level. And because they made it performance-based pay, if you don't reach your target, if you don't have a line manager that's over you that is empathetic and sympathetic to the needs of your class and the workload, they're going to tell you, I'm sorry, we can't up your pay grade because you haven't met that target. And it is just so unrealistic. There are such a range of needs in that classroom. I can't cater to everyone. There are some students for whom their parents do not, find education important. It is just not a priority for them. So I don't know how I'm supposed to get little Timmy over there, who doesn't care about learning and education, up to standard, because he's just in my classroom doing bandulu. So it is a difficult climate to navigate.
Yeah, that was the next question I was going to ask you, because we understand you as a teacher. You have responsibilities in your role to nurture and educate the students put in front of you. I think people don't necessarily, as you articulately mentioned, you have all different personalities, and I think people underestimate how many children, like how 30 is a lot of children.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a lot, right? So that's all your responsibility. When parents drops off little Timmy, the classic scenario name, at 9 o'clock or just before 9 o'clock, yeah, and they pick him up at 3:30, whatever. From your experience, how much involvement would you say parents have with their children on the educational system?
I think that it varies. It depends on the parent, and you can tell the difference. Like you have, the parents are involved. You have those students where they come in and their reading diaries are signed every week. And you can tell just by the attitude of those children, they're polite, they have etiquette, they put their hand up and engage in the learning. They're active participants in their learning. They're curious. And you can tell that foundation has been built for them from a young age. And then on the other side of things now, you will have a child where you give them their homework. This is your homework for the week. And he will just screw it up in my face and throw it. So you know that education is not important, and it's reflected in their behavior in that do you know what? The climate today is...
Is that a home issue? For a child to just screw it up, and I know you're not lying, because I've witnessed this. For a child to screw up, look at something which is educating them, and just screw it up and throw it away in front of your face, is that a home safeguarding issue you need to address with that parent?
I believe so, because I think that it hasn't been instilled in that child the importance of learning and the importance of education. So when you see that child's work and they're still not forming their letters correctly, and they're of an age where they should be able to do so, or they're still spelling was, WHAS, or they're spelling going, GOWING, then I'm like, excuse me, why, if my child came home and couldn't write letters and they're, in year 2, approaching year 3, I'm going to be like, what is going on here? How could you have gone through reception year 1 and year 2, seeing that your child can't form letters and you're okay with that? And then when you do talk to parents, you find some that are very understanding, that I'll work with you. But these tend to be the parents of the children that are good anyway. The parents of those children who, don't behave so well, they're usually very defensive, and it's never their child's fault, or what did you do to upset their child? And it's just this sense of the, there's this whole wave of, children need to be able to feel and don't upset them, and boundaries and all this. And I'm dreading to say it because I'll probably get some backlash from it, but this permissive or gentle parenting that seems to be going on, where the boundaries,
There are, and I've said this, I've said it on stage, and I've said it in the school. It's probably why I'm not there now. There are parents, and like I said, both ways, there are parents in denial of their children's behavior and
Hmm.
not looking at themselves. Yeah.
Indeed, I agree.
Parents out there, and you might be listening right now, there are parents who literally drop their children off, and it is how can I put it now? A drop-off center. It's a drop.
Mm,
They couldn't tell you what happens between 9 and 3 o'clock. And
exactly.
I also take up on board. Parents, yeah, have responsibilities as well. So that might be a parent who's doing 2 or 3 jobs. Yeah,
Yeah.
family life
Mm,
is affecting their their relationship with their own children.
indeed.
So do you take that upon board, Charlene?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I get that everyone's on the rat race. So I understand that some parents genuinely don't have the time to do all this extra reading and to do all of this extra work with their child. But I do like I've been in the game 10 years now, and there is such a stark difference in the attitude, the behaviors, and the mind states of these children. Like 10 years ago when I first started teaching and 5 years in, there was like roughly you would have 30 children in the class, and I would have like just one table of 6 students that struggled to access the curriculum and just needed, some scaffolds, some sentence stems to help them to write and do maths and things like that. Now it seems to have flipped. It's like I've got 5 or 6 students that can independently do the work with just your teaching input. And the rest of the class, like they need the scaffolds. They need you to write a sentence for them to copy it because they genuinely just can't think for themselves. Ask them to innovate a story. And I'm saying to them, let's just change a character. Can you give the character a name? And blank. Mine's just gone blank. There was a child who was in class, but his mind had drifted somewhere. And he's just doing this, like playing, like his fingers, like he's on a screen. And I'm like, where have you gone? Like, come back to the present. And these behaviors are becoming more prevalent in the classroom. And I think that is why last year we saw 40,000 teachers walk out of the profession. Now, that's a significant number. And I think parents need to be aware of the fact that if this continues and we still see these numbers dwindling, there's going to be no teachers. And then the onus to educate the child is going to fall to you, the parent. So I think that it needs to be, it's a discussion that needs to be had, I would say.
Yeah, boy, we are in Revelations right now.
Oh, you can say that again. Indeed.
Before I bring on our next guest, is a business partner of yours, I just want to know why is the education system so female dominated?
I think because teaching it requires a lot of nurturing. So the children are in a phase where, they're trying to learn to regulate their emotions and they're trying to learn the ways of the world. And I think if you have a woman will be naturally more drawn to those types of roles because it's a nurturing role. And us as women, we have that as like an innate biological desire to nurture and to love and to care for children. So I think that's why it's so female dominated for that reason.
Mm. And one more question before I bring on our next guest. How important is a man play a role in the education system?
I think, especially today, I think it is extremely, extremely important because men kind of have that firm stance, like you are not going to, and the voice, and they hear that and they will simmer down. Whereas women are like, come on, stop. We have more patience, I would say, and children can get away with a lot more with a lot of women because of our disposition. And I think that men they don't use their emotions as much. They're more so logic driven. And I think that's something that these children, especially those teenagers, need in order to, thrive in the education system.
All right. And on that note, I think you've introduced our next guest or a guest to add to the show. Mel, I'm assuming that he's a teacher and he's your business partner. Timbo in the building. You introduced him.
How's it going, man? Yeah, my name's Timbo. I'm not an actual teacher, but I've worked with youths for a pretty long time. I worked in Westminster. So I worked with Westminster Parliament, like for young people. And I was working with, he was the youngest ever MP for Westminster, which is Hamza. he's no longer the MP, but at 22, he was the young mayor of Westminster. So I work with the likes of him.
The reason why I use that terminology, teacher, because indirectly you are involved with young people and you are foreseeing their future through education. So you are teaching in some kind of form, and I suppose having a male figure in their lives is a great aspect. So I need to ask you a big cousin question to Luke. How you know my cousin?
So we bumped in with each other to each other, and so we go to the same church.
Okay.
And she asked someone about me, and from there we kind of started speaking, and then we got into talking about education and so on and so forth, and that's what we got to this stage of actually building this online tutoring business.
Why is education so important to you and the platform you and Charlene have come about?
I think it's hugely important. It's like the bedrock. There's a guy called a famous investor called Ray Dalio. He's one of the most successful hedge fund managers. He manages over about 150 assets under management for his company. It's called water something, but basically just Ray Dalio basically. So he wrote a book called The Changing World Order. He's got another book called Principles. That's where he got his notoriety from. He's actually a mentor of Pete Diddy's going through a situation, but he's actually a mentor of Pete Diddy. And
yes. I don't think you should be giving up anymore.
In it.
I think he's got his GCSEs.
But he wrote a book called Changes in the World Order, and one of the bedrock of a society or civilization or a kingdom or whatever society, education is right at the foundation.
Yeah.
So it's education, and then you have before anything basically. So that's literally like the beginning. You got education, then you got trading, and then you got trading with world trade, and then you have a financial center and so on and so forth. All of that comes later. I think when people, especially in the lower classes or in income, when they say, "Oh, we need an economic reform, we need an economic rising or whatever," they skip over the main part, which is education. A well-balanced and educated a people or a nation or civilization will make progress for any nation to actually. The whole point is to be able to compete in the world stage and to actually trade with other people. That's actually.
I'd be very interested to know what part of the book did P. Diddy actually read of his brothers. He just said that. It just reminded me. I was saying, because it reminded me of a book when I was reading about Weinstein. And the manipulation, anyway. The comedy, you know I'm a comic, right? So that just came out. My head was begging with jokes. We're going to keep it professional. So, I want to ask you this as a guy, as a man. Obviously, you do it online. Do you both do physical teaching?
I was still teaching, but part-time doing supply work. So I came out of the education system full-time because it was just too much. I had no work-life balance, coming home drained and can't give my children what they need. So I now just do part-time supply work. And then the rest of the time is spent with my personal students with the business.
What about you? It is Timbo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you only teach online or do you physically see your students?
So I no longer work for Westminster, so I'm working with Charlene right now. But before it was physically, I was meeting up with. It was a different type of students. So they were more so driven. So we had one that went to Harvard who was learning in one of the schools that all the prime ministers go to. She was a Russian, and now she went to Harvard, and now she works in New York for the UN. And so I was working with more so driven young children. So there was one who was 14, and he was he used to train adults how to play chess, and he was like quite a good chess player himself. So yeah, all of these.
Did you see the Nigerian guy who played the 50 people at chess? And he
I saw that video.
That's impressive. Very impressive.
Only a Nigerian boy. He played 50, and he was playing like that. He plays a big man.
Mm-hmm.
He plays a big man. If racism could add smaller, he beat him.
You did well,
those Nigerians, boy. Those Nigerians have got a brain on them.
Yeah. There's so much to talk about this, and I'm so glad I've got yourself, both of you on here. And from a male perspective, I do want to ask, because in this current climate, Charlie would understand this. From a male perspective, safeguarding is so important. You know what I mean? And to be accused of anything and making sure. I mean, Charlie can be accused of stuff as well, but from a male perspective, being in the school environment is like, how do you safeguard yourself in this current day and age without any kind of form of accusations, and that just not to safeguard physically, but verbally what you say, because we're dealing with young people who now probably haven't got that backbone like us growing up. And our parents told her, I'm going to slap the shit out of you. You know what I mean? It wasn't physically meant that. You know what I mean? So how do you safeguard yourself, Timbo?
I think with anything, with changing anything, I think anyone that thinks to change anything, you go strictly to the behavior. But before that, there's layers before that actually influence the behavior. Going directly to actually a change of behavior or avoiding certain behaviors to put you in a position where safeguard issues will arise is like the last straw. So before that, there's layers before that. You have to create an environment where issues like safeguarded are minimal. They don't arise up. They don't become prevalent in the environment. So whenever you go, like teachers today can't really control the environment. That's the problem with a lot of schools today. So whenever you can control an environment to a place where it's actually conducive to actual learning and actual working together as a team. Because I don't know, when I was in school, it was all like you go into the exam and you're a single person going into exam, but it doesn't mimic the real world, which is actually working within a team. So if you can create an environment where people are working together, not individual, where you sit down in the exam, you're actually, I was saying this to Charlene, like imagine if we had the mindset of working together, and actually we could have all passed the tests. Like, oh, you do that part, I don't understand this question, and so on. Because that's how the real world works. So I think creating an environment of people working together, working with the teachers and the students actually working together, safeguard issues, people are going to be a lot more open and safeguard issues won't arise as much. But if you don't have control of the environment like the teachers do, then it's going to be difficult.
I agree. I've never looked at it like that. You know what I mean? Even our leaders and influencers, so to speak, in the world who affect policies, they don't go around and say, right, in a hall in a room by themselves and do the budget. They have a collective of people to challenge, to speak for, to argue the fors and against, and then they deliver. And this is why I've always said to myself, being involved for a number of years, the education system is flawed.
Indeed.
Is that statement I've just made, is that a strong statement? Is that unfair, Charlene?
I think that is a very fair statement, and I feel like it is one that is reflected in the minds of many. The school system, there's no diversification in it. So when 20 years ago, I was in secondary school and I did Of Mice and Men. Some people did Macbeth, some people did A Christmas Carol. 20 years later, my son is still studying the same things. Why? The world has moved on. Like, I learned about Pompeii and the volcanic eruption and the Great Fire of London. Why do I still need to teach that? These children don't care. They're not engaged. Also, what you will find is what used to be a year 4 or year 5 target, say, for instance, being able to convert milligrams to grams and to kilograms. That is now being introduced as young as year 3. So they're bringing in the harder and more abstract concepts younger. These children can't do it. We're living in an age where the screens are just on overdrive and the gaming. What that then does is create a climate in your mind that then causes these children to exhibit ADHD tendencies when they're not actually diagnosed with ADHD. It's just because you've been looking at a screen for so long. You have children where they can't write correctly because the muscles in their fingers are not strong enough. It's going to take for these higher ups to recognize the climate that we are currently in. 60% of parents don't believe that it's their sole responsibility to potty train their child, and they're sending their children into reception in nappies. So the education system can't stay as it is because it no longer reflects the needs of the students that are out there.
It's crazy. Timbo, have you got children, Timbo?
No, I ain't got no children. Got a whole bunch of cousins though that I look after.
Would you feel comfortable if you have children in the future, or even your little cousins? Do you feel comfortable them in a school education system of today?
No, 100%. Not really. If they were driven, I'll be like, okay, it's cool. But there's those children who are just self-motivated from a young age and they know what they want to do. But the majority of others, they need guidance. So I won't be comfortable now. Because some time ago, I met one of my teachers whilst I was walking home, and I was like, oh, buddy enough and say, hey, remember me? And so on and so. He did not want to know. He was like, that's a long time ago. I'm not, not interested. I was like, yeah.
He's still teaching?
Huh?
He's still teaching?
I don't know. No.
That was a long time ago. That's what he said to you?
He didn't say that to me, but he just did not want to engage. He's just like, whatever.
It'd be funny if he said, like, it was a long time ago. I'm out in there trying to throw these rocks. I know you go, Ruben. But
you just forget that these teachers have lives themselves, and there's very few that actually. Well, there's some. I'd probably say 60-40 that actually love teaching and so on and so forth. But most people are just doing it for the job. So you ain't got that nurturing environment for for all my cousins and so on and so forth. So that's what worries me.
You start off loving it. They drain the love from you as you keep going through.
Are you talking about education or man?
Education. Oh, mate.
So let's get to the crux of this here before we wrap up. I'm going to ask, you are homeschooling.
Yes.
I'm a strong advocate in homeschooling.
Yes.
Even though I've never done it, but if I had a second chance and we should as parents fit it into our curriculum. Why do you think it's beneficial for parents to homeschool their children?
I believe it's beneficial because this current, I keep referring back to this current climate, there's so much foolishness out there. When you send your child off into that kind of environment, you no longer, or you have a very limited say over who they are, instilling certain principles in them. And those principles that you should be instilling are then being instilled by their teachers and their friends. So I'll give you an example. When my son was in school, the teacher said to him, when you die, you can choose whether you go to heaven or hell. And he said, miss, I don't agree. I think it depends on how you live your life, and then that will determine where you get to go. And she said to him, are you the teacher or am I? And she said, your point is irrelevant. So she's making the children, she's enforcing her own principles on them. And as much as she's allowed to have her own, there are other children that may not agree. So now you're turning it into some kind of indoctrination camp. because you're not allowing anyone else to have their own voice, and you are, giving them a negative consequence through your words because they no longer agree with you. So homeschooling is beneficial for that sense. It also allows you to work at your child's own pace and to tailor and cater to their needs and their interests. So my son doesn't like learning about Christmas Carol. Therefore, I can teach him something else. I can get, a Black owned book and teach him that, because that's what he's interested in, Black history. So you can tailor it to meet the needs of your child, and you can tailor it to suit their interests. You can tailor it to suit their temperament. If they're very hyperactive, you can incorporate more outdoor activities to cater to that need. And it's just more flexible, I would say, in terms of what you teach and how you teach it.
I had this conversation with one of my sons, about the homeschooling versus state schooling, and I said that I told him that if I had the chance, I would homeschool you, and he said, "Dad, I'm glad I went to school. I needed school because school taught me people skills. School taught me how I must move in my life. If I didn't have school, I would not be in the situation or position I'm in today." So, Timbo, what Charlene mentioned about the choices, what are we should say, the pitfalls, the downfalls of you can see from homeschooling?
I think the social aspect, because we're all social creatures. I think we learn socially, and I think that's the aspect where school, or the school environment, or college or university, that's where it wins. I think when you go to college and university, I think that's what they all look forward to anyway. It's just the social environment, the social aspect of it. I think that's what is lost. I think, yeah, the people skills, and just knowing how to deal with certain people and what to expect in the real world. I think that's what's missing directly in the homeschool environment. But you can actually do certain things where you can actually do like extra activities outside the home, where you can actually include that in. But when students say that, or when students say that, it's normally because of the social aspects of just dealing with people and knowing how to stand on your own 2 feet and deal with aggressive people, nice people, and so on and so forth. So I think, yeah, the social aspect.
Because it is important, because it's very much in a school environment, you know how to deal with conflict. It's either that fight or flight, problem solving, because you're going to only hear it from one aspect. And this is why, as much as I'm an advocate of homeschooling, I also do recognize the social aspect of what the school is. So since you've been homeschooling, like, and you teaching your children, Charlene, and your cousins and that online, does the British education system recognize what you're teaching to go on in their lives? For example, I'm a believer that life skills need to be taught to young people. So know how to budget, understand where your Air Force Ones were bought and how what it took, the mechanisms to take to save that money to buy your brand new trainers and going on holidays and going on trips. Life skills is important. So in the aspects of subject matters, does the British education system recognise what parents teach their children at home?
To an extent, I would say more can be done. So I think within the education system, I don't know that they really prepare. They teach us, the subject knowledge and how to pass an exam based on whatever subject it is. But the life skills, I think, are missing. So we currently have in the UK the highest number of 16 to 18-year-olds that are not in education, employment, or training. So that tells me that they weren't inspired to do anything. They don't know what to do. Like, where are they? What are they doing? So I don't think that the education system necessarily prepares them for that. Whereas if you incorporate that into your homeschooling routine, then you can teach your child that. There are so many homeschoolers. If you join a homeschooling group, you can get your socialization that way. And there are a lot of homeschoolers, young children that are entrepreneurs already from such a young age. There was one that wrote a book There are some that own their own what do you call it, organic soaps and skincare businesses, and this is like from children from 8 years old. So there is, you know, a really important aspect of homeschooling that you can incorporate, whereas the school system, because there are so many students, they don't necessarily have the resources or the support to do that.
Do Ofsted, either of you two can answer this question, do Ofsted come into your yard and check up what you're doing if you're homeschooling?
Not
Because I've seen teachers literally freak out when Ofsted comes into a school. As a parent, you're more likely to freak out. Oh my God, the house is nasty.
So Ofsted don't come in, but your local authority does. They come in, they check the education that you're providing. They ask for, you know, examples of work and things like that. And you do have to prove that you're giving your child a full-time education. You don't need to follow the national curriculum as set by the schools, but you do need to be providing, literacy, maths, and they need to be competent in those core subjects at least. And they do check for that.
Timbo, you mentioned that you used to teach driven children. I like the words you chose there, driven. Non-bad breed, pick me them. Yeah. Those driven children, on the real, those driven children, are they from backgrounds which we could describe as privileged?
No, you'd be surprised. So Hamza, who was the youngest mayor of Westminster, he's Moroccan. I actually call him French Montana. So he's not from a privileged background. There was so many. There's lots of North Africans. Probably because Westminster's got a lot of North Africans. There was one of them, the Russian that I spoke. She was privileged. She went to I forgot the name of the school, but it's where all the prime ministers go to. And then she ended up going to Harvard.
Eton.
Eton. I think the one behind Westminster. I can't remember the name. It's around Westminster Parliament. I don't think it's Eton. I know Eton. I don't think it's Eton.
Okay.
But yeah, no. So no, not all of them come from privilege.
Who would recognize? So this young Moroccan boy, French Montana, who would recognize his talents? Because he's from background similar to us, but there's something gifted about this young student which has been picked up. So his parents might say he's been doing these timetables since 2 years old. So he shouldn't be in this class. Who picks that up and who nurtures that and propels that to the next level?
That's what I'm saying. He stepped in. He made himself aware. He made himself, he stepped in. He just walked through the door himself. I don't think there was any like, oh, you need to do this. So that's why I recognize that there's only a few that have that, I want to do that, so I'm going to go over there type of thing. So where others need a little bit more guidance. But yeah, he didn't I mean the parents were supportive. Oh, they want, you want to do this, so yeah, we'll support you, and you can leave the house at 6. That's fine.
Would you say being homeschooling young children or students, they become more entrepreneurial?
I would say so, because you can be intentional about it. You can intentionally do it. Oh, go on. You're going to say something.
Most entrepreneurs homeschool their children. So I think that kind of helps. They homeschool their children, and then they go into those big colleges, or universities that have connections. It's really a social connection where you can actually find your future business partner. Those schools and colleges.
You say most entrepreneurs homeschool their children, but isn't it a difference between homeschooling your child and getting a private tutor for your child? So if you're Richard Branson, when are you going to find the time to sit and read and do math homework when you're running multi-million-pound companies?
I was listening to Elon Musk, and he has his children literally at the Tesla factory, just there doing what they need to do. But just being in that environment, they're learning things. He literally has these children there at the Tesla factories. So it's more so learning through osmosis rather than sit there and 1 + 1 is 2. It's just being in that environment, and it's just because we're social beings, we just learn social cues or how people walk. You end up literally walking like people or sounding like people. So I think it's just obviously you hire private tutors. They do hire private like tutors and stuff, but they more so let their children be around them. I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine, and I was saying like these billionaires or whatever, they'll hire consultants, but they'll fly them in. My friend will be like, "Why are you going to spend money flying them in, giving them dinner and this and all that, where you can actually have a phone call with them and do the deal over the phone?" But what these people understand is being in amongst around people is more, because you just get a better feel. It's through osmosis where you pick up things a lot quicker than being on the phone.
I agree 100%. Like those years taking the mickey at the Asian kid in the shop, you know, when mummy's lap and he's like, and he is asking that same kid for a job. My bad. You know what I mean? That's real talk, man. You know what I mean? You go for the job and they ask, "Can I have a job?" And they say, "Don't remember me, do you?" Right. Name your business, Charlene, Timbo.
Oh, Timbo, do you wanna?
So she on her pages is Miss Sealey's homeschool, online school. But we have programs on Minds of Excellence. So our programs are mainly on Minds of Excellence, the homeschooling, Miss Sealey homeschool. The front end of a social media is mainly one-to-one tutoring for English. We specifically focus on English. We will expand to like maths, but other core subjects, but we specifically focus on English because people look at English like just writing and so on and so forth. But English, if looked at right and if done right, is actually the key basically. So it's like there's 3 keys basically for anyone, whether a child, you know, grandparent or adult, and it's having focus, having an investor mentality, and having being able to persuade not just other people but yourself. So English is almost like a tool for persuasion, because you're going to have to learn how to persuade through writing an email, through sending a letter, or through just presentation, being able to present, and so on and so forth. So that's where English, people just look at Macbeth and so on and so forth, which is good. So you can actually see what people are inferring or what a text is inferring, and so like picking up those cues. But I think people need to look beyond the school. It's actually helping you with, you know, social skills and communication skills and so on and so forth, because you're going to have to, number one, persuade yourself first, and then you persuade other people.
Even before we go, did either of you two do Latin?
Nope.
So, you know, I didn't do either, but what I have known and heard conversations and had conversations that people, because when you talk about English, people say what type of or level of English, because they say Latin grammar. The people who learn Latin understand words better than the current English level. That's why I asked that question. Look, we've got a couple of minutes before we wrap up. When we come back, yourself and Charlene, a bit more brown, a bit more less stressed.
Yes.
I would like to invite you back to the show and give the public an opportunity to ask questions as well, and do it possibly in the evening. Are you guys up for that?
Yeah, definitely. It'd be wonderful.
Right, but it's been a pleasure. I like how you said, Timbo, that you met my cousin in church, so it doesn't mean that you off the hook. I'm in church, and I like that would not be upset. If another church man, the worst man. All power to you, Timbo. I respect you taking your time out, King. And I said, you keep on teaching those young people and educating them in all kind of aspects. And Charlene, proud of you. I'm actually quite ashamed because I never knew you was Christian.
That's how long you ain't seen me for.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Man's been resurrected and come back. I didn't even know. I didn't even know. That's how much I love my family. But anyway, look, guys, take it easy.
You.
And next time I see you, you'll be on the beach. Yeah?
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are coming to wrap up the end of the show.